glitch on that one.
Good deal. Well, Coach, why don't you start with giving me a little bit of a background on your team and kind of the state that you guys have been in this past year, or this past few months, I should say.
Yeah, sure. So, so you kind of hit March and you go into lockdown, and you kind of go into lockdown with that more the fear state, in the sense of not really knowing if you're ever going to come out of it, and not even attending the grocery store because you're worried that the grocery cart was going to blow up on you. And then you kind of slowly start coming out of that in May. We're doing Zoom meetings with our team, just trying to stay connected to a certain degree, not knowing what the fall would present, but kind of knowing that without a vaccine, some type of football may be permitted, but it was looking pretty limited. But still wanting to just stay connected, and stay connected too, not so much from, boy, I hope we're a good football team, because that's never been our desire and our goal, but more so just, hey, let's make sure we're going to class, let's make sure we're taking care of business. And then that really got ramped up when George Floyd was killed on the streets, and then obviously the protest ensued. And a lot of that was unique, just in the sense of the injustices that are out there, but then also knowing that with the injustices that happen in this country, those take not only years but decades to change. And knowing also that, are you still there, Colton?
Yes, sorry, we got a little bit of a technical delay, but no worries, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
I do. Oh, you're back. Okay. Well, welcome to our world, right? There you go. I've been having issues all morning, so when you freeze again, I'm going to pause. But
please do. Thank you.
I think I left us. Yeah, so I think I left us in May, and so what happened is, when I saw that George Floyd was killed, I remember I was sitting at my cabin, and immediately in my head, I knew that it wouldn't be good, in the sense of, I think when we're made aware of racial injustices, I think it's good in the sense of change can take place, but I know that change takes decades. And we're living in a culture of McDonald's drive-through, where we feel we can drive through a McDonald's and we get our burger in 2 minutes. And that's how the laws are going to be changed, and that's how things are going to be changed. The things that have happened over hundreds of years, and it's just going to, and we're done. And so I knew that one happened. I also knew that there are some of my athletes that probably won't respond well to that. And so I was nervous. And I didn't know exactly what would happen, but I just knew something good would not happen. Now, to the level of what happened, I will be honest, I didn't expect that. But I was nervous, more so just because I wanted to make sure my athletes not only were safe, but that they were making wise choices, by all means. And then also at the same time, let them know that, hey, I want you to use your voice. But I was just thinking back to myself at the age of 16, and I was saying, what is my voice? What does that even mean? And without guidance and direction. And if somebody throws a rock through a target and jumps inside and grabs a TV, where does your brain go? And you go follow that person, which is going to get nothing done in the area of racial injustice. But you're 16, and so you just take advantage of the situation, and you're not thinking clearly. So we tried to connect during that time. It was a challenge. People were reaching out in a helpful manner, but that was just, even reflecting back, that was tough. But then you come out the other side, and you kind of get out the other side, and then you say to yourself, okay, so where do we take this, and what do we do? And we kind of, as a Minneapolis organization, one of my fellow colleagues reached out to a couple of us, and we put together a Zoom meeting with our Minneapolis players and coaches, and we just kind of and we met. And we just allowed the players just to kind of speak, and just kind of how are they feeling, what's happening. The feelings were really raw at the moment, and there was confusion because where do you go? And once again, it's not McDonald's, and I knew that. And I mean, I remember doing the Wall Street Journal article and speaking to Rachel Bachman and kind of saying the reality of this is Martin Luther King marched in 1960. We're 60 years later. And we've come how far? I think we've made gains. Don't get me wrong. I think we have. But then even this summer, reading a book by Benjamin Watson, Under Our Skin. And he's writing that book on behalf of Ferguson, the Ferguson case, the Ferguson ordeal in 2014. And I'm saying we're reliving it again in 2020. That's 6 years. And the strides we've made probably are nothing. I mean, really, truly, when I read that book, so eloquently written, but I was reading it going, my goodness, this is exactly where we're at in 2020. So in 6 years, we've made no gains. In 60 years, we've made small gains, and it's just crazy. And then, so really, truly just piecing that together with the pandemic, trying to figure out, if there be football, wouldn't there be football, trying to get players, some players went off the grid. That always scares me. Especially the ones that I'm concerned about, trying to track them down with no way to track them down. But then some great people. I mean, like what connects us, Joe Santa, comes in and he's just like, hey, this is what I want to do. I just want to offer. And there was other people that came in, and a lot of it was, we don't know how to help. We don't know what to do, but how do we help you? How do we support you? And that's really, truly, to this day, as I look back at donations, as I look back at kindness, as I look back at gifts, as I look back at things that are kind of sustaining us right now, it's people. It's people coming around people. And then I think about that and I say to myself, I put a clip out there in June about humility to a ministry that I started or whatever. And really, truly just realizing that we all have our issues, we all have our flaws, and in the world's eyes, some greater than others. But when we all admit to those flaws, but then come around each other, how it's uplifting, and how there's just moments where you just need that, from a Joe Santa to other people that I can list that have really sustained, helped build us up. And then really right now we're back playing football as of 3 weeks ago, and it's miserable as a head coach. I mean, it's one of the worst things I've ever experienced in my life. I'm thrilled for Rydell. I'm thrilled for Joe Santa. I'm thrilled for Shut Helmets. I'm thrilled for the small person that gets a job. That's awesome. For me personally, it's a pandemic, and it's a sport that is challenging in and of itself, let alone with COVID. And then there's still the racial injustices. We just had Chauvin here released on a bail bond or whatever, and that blows up. And it's trying to explain to your players that I get it. I get this upsets you, and that's okay for it to upset you, but we still have these laws in place. Some of them for good reason, because they may end up protecting you. But at the moment, they appear to be really, really bad. And so constantly dealing with that, constantly trying to emphasize it. And I know for me personally, there's been a lot of these areas of racial injustice that I've been aware of. And I think people have probably said, oh, you've been sensitive to it. But I haven't directly looked at it and said to myself, holy crap. I mean, this world's a mess, and we're seeing it now. I mean, we're seeing things out there that just make me go, really? I mean, you can't see both sides of it. I mean, and that's what I loved about Benjamin Watson's book, where he does talk from both sides. He kind of looks at it from both angles and kind of says, okay, this is one view, this is another view. However, how do we be harmonious in all this, and how do we start to make some change to better this thing? So that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where I've come from. And now we're kind of living in the middle of a season and still plugging along.
Absolutely. So, COVID hits and we all kind of went through COVID as a nation together. And we've all kind of experienced that together. But what we haven't went through together is some of the racial injustices that you guys have experienced in your backyard. We've seen it on the news, on the national news, and we've seen all that. But an interesting perspective that you have is that all this was going on in your community, in your backyard. How from somebody who saw these things firsthand and had players that were dealing with these things firsthand, how bad has it gotten or did it get there?
Yeah, so going back, it got bad. I mean, that's all there is to it. It was the peaceful protests are awesome. Voices were being heard, but then it plain came to war and destruction is what it basically came to in our neighborhood. And I've never been a part of that. At the same time, it was, as I look back now, I say to myself, I'm glad I experienced it. I don't want to see it happen again. I think it's wrong. But at the same time, for me to experience it was powerful because it was horrible. My mom lives 1 block away from the 3rd precinct, and they burned half a block away. They burned the post office down. So we're wondering, on a personal level, what do you do from a family standpoint? At the same time, I'm dealing with 50, 60 players out there kind of going, okay, where are they at? What are they doing? Are they a part of this? And then at the same time, my house is half a mile away from it all, and just kind of going, okay, so how do I protect this village as well, knowing that if I called on my phone, nobody's going to respond. I mean, there's not going to be 1 ounce of help coming in. The awesome thing about that was it put me into a position that I've never been in before, where I thought about coworkers that I've worked with in the past that grew up in the South that have been Black. And they've made statements where it's like, we just don't call the police because A, we're not going to get help, or B, it's not going to be the help that we want. And I sat there thinking to myself, I've never felt that. I've always felt that, if I'm in danger, if I'm in trouble, you call the police and then they come and help you, and life is good. And so from that perspective, I think it really opened my eyes that this is what they live in 24/7 their entire lives for 55 years. They live in this moment of June, whatever that was, or May, the end of May. Those exact dates aren't coming to my head. But this is what they live in, but not just for a week or 2 weeks. Because right now, Colton, I'll be honest with you, those 2 weeks, horrific. Week later, it was still smoldering. A couple of weeks later, food all over the place. People giving away stuff, cleaning up, everything else. Now, months later, just vacant land, possibly waiting to rebuild. I know that they're waiting on the trial and stuff like that, but quiet. It's just quiet. Lake Street's just quiet. Those buildings now have been removed and everything else, and people are talking about rebuilding and what's going to come in, and what kind of whatever. And so it's almost like what I thought would happen is somewhat happening, in the sense that, not that we're forgetting about it, because I think there's still reminders, but it's over and it's okay. Because now if I call the police, you know what, they respond, to a certain degree. I know that they've lost some, funding and different things like that. But yeah, so that's kind of, it was one of the worst things I've ever experienced. But then my fear was we'd come out of it on the other side and then life would go on. And I'm hoping that's not what's happening, but I do feel that somewhat, that life is going on. Hey, we got football again. Oh yeah, we're playing football again. Oh, this is great. Let's just keep moving. Let's just keep plowing ahead. And when the trials come up, let's make sure that we get the National Guard on board, because we don't want that to happen again. But at the same time, are there changes being made? And I don't know. I know we got an election coming up. I know there's laws to be changed, everything else, and I don't know. I read the paper today looking for something, going, oh, what's the new news? Well, I don't see anything about laws. I don't think you see anything about that. So it's like, and that's ultimately where it has to take place. So horrible, quiet right now, but hoping it's still strong in the people that can make a difference's mind.
Now, how did, Joe Sansa, how did he come in and what was his message to you when he wanted to help? I know it was probably something like, I don't know how we can help, but we want to help. What did you tell him?
Yeah. So Joe comes in. Um, I can't remember exactly if he, it's probably through email of some sort, and just said, "Hey, I'd really like to connect with you." And at the time, we were getting different responses from people off of the Wall Street Journal article. And so I kind of was just spending my time responding to people, trying to connect with people. And with Joe, it was more one of those things. I got the email, and I remember vividly going, "Oh, he wants to make a shirt or something like that." So I kind of respond to him, just kind of, I got to admit, flippantly, kind of going, "Oh, I got," and I was dealing with humility at the time. That's this clip I had kind of made and talked about, was humility. And so I kind of threw some things at him, threw some colors at him. But then I'm thinking he's going to come back to me and he's going to kind of give me the $4.99 speech, like I can get you 100 T-shirts at $4.99. And in my mind, I'm going, like any coach that can't even afford a couple of helmets, I'm going, "Oh, that's $500. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I'll be back in touch with you." But then Joe, out of the kindness of his heart, I remember him just kind of saying, "What can we do for you?" And so I threw these ideas at him, not expecting to ever hear back from him again, because I'm thinking, well, he's in the middle of a pandemic. He's probably hurting financially because nobody's out there making stuff right now. And all of a sudden, he not only responds, he responds quickly, and within a matter of probably a week or weeks, I got a couple boxes sitting at my door front. And I don't know what it is, Colton, and I'll never understand this. I played in the NFL. I've enjoyed my time with a bunch of a lot more affluent people than myself. I played at a time where you weren't always making the millions, but there were people making the millions. And you could put a T-shirt in your locker that was probably worth 50 cents, and you could excite the most affluent football player out there, like, "Whoa, I got a T-shirt," and they would throw on this Johnson and Johnson like T-shirt, like they were so excited, and they were making $5 million a year. So when those boxes came, I got to admit, it was two things. Number one, it was something free. Kids love free stuff, and that's fun. Coaches love free stuff.
We all do.
But then the message, yeah, I think we all do. But then the message was so powerful, because that's exactly it. And to this day, that message is resonating. We wore those T-shirts last week at our first opening game, and we're behind a movement with putting zero on the back of our helmets off of Justin Bateman's zero acceptance of tolerant, zero tolerant. Zero racism. I can't even think of it, but there's no acceptance of racism out there. So we're wearing these humility T-shirts, and I remember even our principal going, "That's it. That's the message." I mean, because I went back to Chauvin too, and I kind of went back to the officer, and I said to myself, as I was thinking about Joe giving us these T-shirts, and I said to myself, we can look at him, and we can say to ourselves, he's evil. He did something horrific. It was bad. Sure, I agree. At the same time, who are we? Who are we in this all? If all we say is he's a moron and he's an idiot or everything else, and we walk away, what does that make us? I mean, I'm just kind of going, really? I mean, you're just going to badmouth somebody? I mean, that's ultimately what he did, was he took authority over somebody else. So now we think, oh, we're just going to trump him. And if that's our understanding of life, whoever gets to the top first wins. We got issues. And so those humility shirts, they not only resonated free, which kids are like, they resonated a message, so that when we're wearing those shirts and we're doing something, it basically said, hey, this is something that is what we're all about, thinking of others first. Joe Santa, that shirt resonated who he was as a person, because I'll be honest with you, he gave up 70 shirts, he gave up time of his workers, he gave up a product when in a time he probably was. I remember talking to my shirt guys here, and they were laid off for 6 weeks. They had no income. There was nothing coming in. There was nothing going out. And how do you give when you know in return you may get nothing? And that's humility. And that's exactly the message we wanted to resonate. And that's what those shirts meant. It was a great gift. It's fun to get something free. but it was the message, and that message is continuing to resonate. And that's kind of where we're stamping. I mean, we're talking about being the change. You can't be the change if you're not humble. You just can't. And so pretty cool. Pretty cool.
That's very well said. You know, in a time where we see a lot of professional athletes with messages on the back of their jerseys, or, you know, NFL players with messages on the back of their helmets of, you know, of what they stand for. How do you think, you know, a T-shirt that represents humility and kind of gives the players a voice that they're looking for in this matter? What do you think, you know, just having a T-shirt that has a statement on it like that does for somebody, does for a 16-year-old trying to find his voice?
You know, Colton, that's an awesome question, because I think it's one I constantly ask myself, like, what are we doing? What are we doing to make a difference? But then I forget that if that shirt is looked upon by just one of my athletes, and it changes his heart to say to himself, you know what, I can make a difference. I can change something. I think that's what it means. I think sometimes we look at things and how are we going to change the greater good, in the sense of all 50 players are going to go out and do something dynamic, and they're going to, you know, all be this or that, and they're going to be the ones donating shirts or changing the laws, all 50 players. I think we lose sight of the fact that it may have nothing to do with any of our 50 players. Maybe it's one of their sons one day that are going to grow up, and this player is going to remember this moment. He's going to think about what humility means and the definition of it. He's going to teach that to his son, and that person's going to make the difference. So that when we're sitting here in 60 years, like Martin Luther King, 60 years later, it's not Martin Luther King that's making the change or the difference. Not even his kids that are making the difference. It's people that he affected who had kids, who have now had kids. And I guess that's where I'm at. I have to think in small moments, because we are not big time here. You know, when they said no fans in our stands, we all got the giggles, because my father passed away last February, and I said, well, now we're down to 2 people in the stands. You know, I mean, I just was kind of like, we never, and that's an over exaggeration, but I'm just saying, I remember seeing my dad clearly at every game, just because there was a lot of space around him. And so we joke, but at the same time, I say to myself, there may be one of these young men that is really going to impact and make a difference. And that message may resonate with him. Where he, you know, I heard a pastor say the other day, it was so good. He said, I saw this sign and it was whatever. And he goes, I looked at that guy and I said, you moron. And I was convicted, he said, because I said to myself, who am I? And then he said, what change am I going to make? What difference am I going to make? So one of my players just has that moment of, this sucks or whatever else. But then he says, what am I going to do? How am I going to change this? You know, what impact can I have on society? That T-shirt could have more impact than we'll ever know. I may be dead and gone, and that T-shirt may still be having an impact, because what lives on through our generations of people.
You know, obviously, this whole message has kind of been that change happens gradually. So, I mean, I don't really expect there to be a huge change by now, but have you noticed any type of change in your players since the first time you got a hold of them when school started back up to now in their behavior or their expressions to things?
I'd like to say yes to that question and make myself feel good, but I can't. All I can say is this, is I know that in my heart I've changed, and I know that my intent is to directly go to the root of the problem. Not why are they a national anthem? Why are they dancing, goofing around, talking, screwing around? Why aren't they being respectful? Your behavior is bad. Rather than look at the behavior, look at the root of the problem. Why are they doing anything but what we've been told to do at the national anthem stand or whatever else? Oh, what's your problem? Well, the national anthem means this to me, coach. Okay. So what it's done for me is it's caused me to go to the root of the problem, not the behavior of the problem. Young people do crazy things. They do. And old people do crazy things. And so the bottom line is, well, what's the root? What's causing it? And so I can't say my players, I've seen a change. I'd like to. Like I said, I'd like to say, oh, yeah, they know that my intent is there. If I do that, I think then I'm lacking humility because I'm like, oh, I'm something great. But I know that my heart has changed. I know my coaches know that where our intent is at, and we're going to focus on this thing, and we're going to continue to do our best to give our players an opportunity to understand how to use their voice, but how to use it appropriately so that it's best heard. And heard in a culture that is not where they want it to be one day. I mean, we're in it's not there. So we have to be sensitive to that because you still have to be heard. If you're going to preach in a church that people like to wear suits and ties, I was once told, wear a suit and tie because at least they'll listen to you. And at the same time, you're going to preach in a church with holy jeans, wear holy jeans because at least they'll listen to you. Although I probably never do that because I look stupid. But that's kind of it. And so how do you give them a voice, but let them know that there's an appropriate way to go about this? But there's a wide variety too. I mean, there's a wide range. And there's times to cross the law. There is. Martin Luther King did cross the law at times. But I think when he did it, he knew that I'm going to do it with the intent to be heard, and that made a difference.
Now, this is obviously a time where football is serving more than just a sport right now. It's giving these kids an outlet to somewhat express themselves. And with this shirt is another opportunity for them to express themselves. As a coach, being in the middle of this and then kind of being the middleman between somebody here in Northeast Indiana that's wanting to help and being, a coach to these kids that are going through these significant life struggles. What do you think, the short-term end goal is to this? If you could look a few months from now and be like, we were able to accomplish this, it's starting to be on the right track. What would you say that would be?
Great question. Real simple answer. Help somebody. Go help somebody. Help in some way. Serve somebody. When you do that, it lifts somebody up. And when you better somebody else and you lift somebody up, that's when I feel change will happen. Short term, help somebody. Somebody helped you, now you go help somebody else. I hope that's the short-term message in this. Maybe that's down a racial injustice piece. It may not be. It may just be helping some old person rake their lawn. I don't know. But help somebody. That's my short term.
Good deal. Now, is there anything that I'm missing from this side? Obviously, we're going to talk to Joe later today. I've never met him, so I'm excited to finally get to meet him face to face. But is there anything I'm missing from your side of things? Of just, I want to make sure that I showcase you guys in the best way possible, and that I give acknowledgement to the people and organizations that have wanted to reach out and make a difference. But you guys wanting to make a difference as well. That's important. That's just as important because they can send as much t-shirts as they want to and, do all this nice stuff. But if you guys aren't, wanting that, then it doesn't do any good, so you guys are the core of the change. And it seems so far that you're trying to handle it as best way as you possibly can. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, you know what I mean? I think what ultimately connected us, Colton, is Joe. And I think the message that he really portrayed to me was he's never asked for anything in return. Never. I mean, never, ever, ever. There hasn't been a ploy. Sure, I get it. I get that we're talking to you. I get he's doing social media. I get all that. I mean, I'm not against that. I mean, that's the Wall Street Journal. I mean, that's publicizing things. That's the world we live in. And I'm glad he's getting some recognition. He's never asked for anything in return. And quite frankly, we just did a school store through him. I chose to do that because he gave us something. I want to try to give him something back. But I'll be honest, when we sell stuff here in Minneapolis, we don't sell very much. I mean, it's just one of those things. And once again, he took a lot of time in setting up this school store and put it out there. And I made his life freaking miserable because I kept changing things and I kept saying, oh no, we can't do that. And I didn't listen to him half the time because he had a higher shipping charge and he told me about it. So I made his life miserable. And he just kept going, how do I help you? How do I help you? How do I help you? And so I think that I really want that to come through more than anything, Colton, is this man didn't come into this to get a Channel 4 news story or whatever. He came into it just because he's like, dude, how do I help you? And he's still, how do I help you? And I tell you what, I'm not patting his pockets. I mean, I know he just gave me a report, and we're doing better than I ever thought we would on sales. But some of our big programs here, they're probably selling thousands of items. We're still in the double digits. You know, I mean, I'm kind of going, wow. When he told me the number, I'm going, whoa, we're rocking it. You know, and I think he's probably thinking, not so much, you know, but he's not. I mean, so that's the message I want to have kind of come across it. I've never heard him say, you know, hey, you know, we're gonna have to shut this down or whatever else. It's always, here you go. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, one more thing I will ask you is, I know that around COVID time, it's kind of weird to be playing football, but do you think that even though it's been kind of a nightmare as a coach to try to play through a season like this, that this has been really good for the kids to try to get their minds a little bit off of what's going on in their community?
yeah, 100%. Whatever miserable state I'm in, I've kind of taken more the Joe Santa approach this year in the sense that I'm going to shield block my players from all the MDH protocol so that they can go out there and play. And I have never had better attendance and participation and work ethic at my practices than I do today because we're on distance learning full time. We practice at 6:30 at night. These young people are dying to do something. I mean, they want to get out and they're going to get out anyways. I mean, there's things going on in our city to this day that aren't very good right now, and we're struggling in some areas. And so what we're doing is we're providing these kids an avenue to express themselves in a controlled, uniform way. We're giving them a voice through football. I mean, we're giving them an opportunity to stay on track, stay off the streets, and everything else. So, yeah, I think football has been great. At the same time, we've had a couple parents that have come in and said, nope, not this year. You know, maybe we have a sibling at home that's maybe more vulnerable. Hey, good for you. You need to make your own decision with your family. I mean, on what's best for you. But the game in and of itself has really, I mean, it's a sport too that attracts an aggressive individual, which sometimes when he's not focused in the right way, can do the things that you don't want him doing. And so it's an opportunity for him to express that aggression in a way that is controlled between the boundaries. And so, yeah, it's been an incredible blessing, I think, to our young people out there. I think that's sports in general. I think it's giving them an outlet. But I don't want to sound like railroading it down. We got to have it. I'm sounding more like it's awesome, but individuals have to make their own choices within it. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Rodney, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, not at all, Colton. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Now, just a couple of background things. Like, how long have you been the coach at South?
Sure. So, been a head football coach in Minneapolis for 23 years. I previously was at a neighbor Minneapolis school, Roosevelt, for 18, and then I took a few years off. And then most recently, this is my fourth season as the head football coach at South. So I've been doing this for 22 years in Minneapolis with a few years in the park board system, and then also as an assistant coach at South before the previous coach retired.
Good deal. And I mean, obviously, it's like you played football at the highest level, so you just kind of wanted to keep the football train going and kind of inspire the next generation. Is that why you got into high school football coaching, or was there more to it?
Yeah, I'm from Minneapolis, came out of Minneapolis, and then returned here after my college and playing days. to teach and to coach. And yeah, I love the game. It's an awesome game. I also understand that as I've evolved as a coach, I know that this is a sport that really can teach about life and really better people. And so that's kind of been our emphasis. We're not kicking out a ton of D1 athletes. Every now and then, we've got a couple of good players out there right now that are floating around in some of our programs. But I think what I'm seeing is when I see players come back, and this will age me, but when I see players come back and I'm coaching their sons now, and they're entrusting me with their sons, I'm saying to myself, oh, okay, they must have had a good experience. And they kind of were at the front end of my coaching, which I probably did a lot of harm. Now I'm looking at it more, I'm more sensitive to things. But yeah, it's a venue to teach our young people characteristic traits that are going to better them in life, because it's a tough game. It really is. I mean, but it's sure a lot of fun. And there's danger and there's risk. Well, what are we in now? We're in a pandemic with danger and risk. I mean, the game just emulates life, and it's pretty cool to see. So yeah, I have a passion to coach it, and I love the sport. I mean, it was good to me. It was fun to me, and I have no regrets.
Well said, Coach. Now, one more thing. How do you successfully, correctly pronounce your last name?
You bet. Good luck with that, Colton. Lossow. So it's just like the first Las, and then the last part is so. So that's the correct pronunciation. Yep, but don't feel bad. I mean, I think one of my first jerseys, either in college or the pros, it was like Lasso. I don't have a name hang up. Some people do, but yeah, Lasso. So Lasso. Yeah.
Okay, will do. Right on. I appreciate that, Coach. Anything else that you want to let me know?
Not at all. I appreciate it.
I really do. I really appreciate it, Coach, and we wish you the best out there. If there's anything that we can do for us, let us know.
Thanks a lot. You have a great day.
Hey, you too. Appreciate it, Coach. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Yep, be blessed.
You too.